Hey, exclamation point. Wanted to ask what happened to the review of the Spider-Man 2 PC port. I feel like even a beloved porting studio like Nixis should have gotten their fair share of criticism about the state of the game at release. Interesting question there, Alex. I mean, we did do a bit of Spider-Man 2 coverage in the Direct, where we just basically,
Right.
I played the introduction and basically said, this really isn't very good at all. And it's one of these games where it's so ill-prepared that, you've got to question whether it's worth doing a review of it beyond that, beyond pointing, a sort of buyer beware stuff, because it's like a moving target, isn't it?
It's awful coverage of those type of games, especially around launch, because Nixie's throws out a patch basically every 3 days if a game launches with issues. If you've looked at the patching schedule, like I'm pretty sure that's their cadence almost. Like one at the beginning of the week, one at the end of the week, almost. And that is an impossible thing for me to cover, because if I have an issue with a bug or a visual issue or a performance issue, it could be fixed in like 3 days. And then I'm rewriting my script, and then I'm refilming, and then I'm redoing all my footage because it's not representative anymore. Not good coverage. Not enjoyable. I think the DF Direct take, or the original take we did with the Last of Us port, could also be a good way to do it.
Yeah.
But then also covering it down the line after it gets better, or maybe it's not better, but maybe there's an opportunity to cover again. You have to think about like how much return I would get for covering it. Like I really, honestly, I don't know. I would expect, sorry to get all technical about this, I'd expect like 80 to 90,000 views at most, for a late port coverage of these Sony games. Unfortunately, for some reason, they are not as popular anymore after the first batch. They don't get nearly as much YouTube coverage. They don't get, for the most part, other than like Ghost of Tsushima, they don't get much Steam play. They're hard to cover later down the line, when it would be like they messed up their chance to get the coverage, weirdly enough to say that. And maybe there are other smaller games that are more deserving in that time period, or other topics that deserve spotlight on DF, both good and bad. So in that case, I can't go back. I would love to have infinite time, but I don't.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. Maybe we could have done something a bit more robust than the Direct, but ultimately the Direct segment just screamed out that the game wasn't really worth buying at that point. We were having issues with I think it was a 5080 that I tried it on. That's problematic, right? Mm-hmm. And I suspect that probably a more correct focus would have been to do a more mainstream-based system, and those issues would have been even more pronounced on that. Or maybe both. But the point is that the more data points you include, the longer it actually takes to develop the video. And it is quite ironic that, it takes Alex as one person more time to cover the game than it does for Nixis to put out a patch.
Yes, it does.
Which is kind of crazy, isn't it? So that's not great. But maybe we should at some point sort of round up the games, the disaster games, to see if they've improved. But it's I'd expect from Nixis that there would be an improvement. I haven't looked at it, but that's the key thing, right? It launched in such a bad state that the sort of goodwill surrounding the port was kind of lost. And I don't know how that translated to sales, but it can't be a good thing. That would be pretty poor. Yeah. What do you make of this, John? Any thoughts on this? I mean, it's a thankless task, isn't it, to be basically chasing a moving target with coverage when it's, and it's actually even more distressing where you put off a game update because there's been a patch for it. You do the due diligence on the patch and find that there hasn't really been much improvement at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is like the worst part of the type of coverage we do, I think. It's very frustrating. And it seems to be ridiculously common these days in the PC space.
Oh, yeah.
You're always in that holding pattern where you're like, should I? Because it's a lot of work to get this info. It does take time. And if you put in all that time and then all of a sudden they drop a patch and all that work is for naught, that sucks. But even if that work is still valid, you still got to then do more work to determine, is that data still valid?
Yeah.
that's very, very annoying. So I can especially understand if there's a game that's like perhaps not performing as well or not gathering as much like attention in the world of PC gamers, that Alex would be very much like, you know what, I'm good. I don't want to go through all that. The only real time to do it then is like maybe you could look at it later, kind of like you suggested. But then again, are the numbers there to justify that? Because it still requires X amount of like time and effort that may not be worthwhile.
Speaking of numbers, John, I noticed your Wreckfest video, Wreckfest 2, which is, a smaller game, arguably, that was deserving of attention, is closing in on 200,000 views now, which is
that's
pretty
what
awesome,
I like.
right?
I prefer that type
That's
of video.
good. I'm glad to see it because, the game is still... I hesitated because it's early access, but, like, it's so, like, promising and interesting that I wanted to highlight it because, like, they're just doing, like, cool stuff with physics. The kind of stuff that Alex and I often talk about, like, wouldn't it be cool if more games did this? And so I felt like putting my money where my mouth was and spending time actually making a video about it to be like, hey, this stuff is cool. Check it out. And they've delivered. I mean, they've been making games for a long time. They're going to finish the game. I'm not worried about the game not coming out. It'll come out.
Right.
That's just, it's still with certain developers like this, you can expect that if there's early access, like the game is going to be finished. And I think they've even said like the end of this year. So it's coming along swell, I believe.